Hello, everybody in Keepland. I'm recording this because I figured that it might be helpful. I'm not a Keep employee, but I have been working with the Keep APIs, the various Keep APIs, for over a decade now, and as a result, I'm kind of an insider as far as a programmer's look goes, and I might be able to fill in some blanks for people. So I figured I'd just try and lay out some of the details because I know there's a lot of questions going on here that really need to be answered, and there is a blog or article out there that covers it, and people like Mark Penny have done their version of explaining things, but from a programmer's perspective, it might be important to understand some of these things because some people are going to need a programmer to help them fix it. Keep has inscripted a few of us in the Keep community as far as developers go to be available to help those who need it. Our first goal is to try and find you the simplest, easiest answer. So if Zapier is an answer, Pabbly, Make is an answer that will solve the problem for you, then we will at least recommend or suggest that. But this isn't meant to go into all the details about that. It's more to help you to identify where you stand or where your integration is. So I'm not going to go over established services or products like Plus This or any other program that's out there that's a public-facing service or product. This is meant to cover help people with custom code that maybe was written 5 years ago and they don't know how close it gets to needing to be rewritten versus just needing to get a different type of product key and replace the old API key with. So that's the purpose of this, is to hopefully help people identify that better on their own. So first, establishing what the issue is. With the API in Keep, there are four methods or four options, I should say. Legacy API key, I'm not going to click on it. Most people are probably familiar with it. If not, it's just an alphanumeric value that Keep generates based on an algorithm they have. It doesn't matter what that is. It's unique to your application, and it gives people full access, or code writers, people who are writing code, full access with the API to your app. It is the lowest security-wise, though, and that's why it's being deprecated. Now, there are also what's called personal access tokens and service account keys. Okay. Now, a personal access token, that is a token similar to a service account key. They're both very similar. The difference is the permissions that are assigned. Service account key has 100% permission, just like the legacy key API key method does, but it is a more secure method on the back end in terms of ensuring that your account doesn't get messed with by some hacker, that kind of thing. The personal access token is whoever is signed in, whatever permissions they are given, those are the permissions that will apply to the access token that is provided here. So you create an access token, you give it a name, it will come up with the access token. You need to make sure that you have that access token stored somewhere safe. You don't want to share it with anybody that's not going to be developing for you. But at the same time, the reason why I say that is because after you do this, and I'll delete it later, but once you do this, it's going to come up with a key for you, okay, and copy. But then from this point on, once this is closed, you're not going to see anything but the last 2 or 3 digits, or maybe 4 digits, depending on how they decide to do it. So don't worry, I'll be deleting this after I make this video. But so this is based on, I'm logged in to my Sandbox app right now. Now I'm the owner, I have full access, but if I had somebody else that I gave partial access to, maybe I gave them admin without having account level access, then the key that's generated here for personal access tokens, that will have the permissions tied to it for the person that created it. So if you were to log in with somebody different, if I was logged in with a different user ID, this wouldn't show up here because it only belongs to the logged in user. Conversely, a service account key is something that's created that gives full access, and it can only be, I'm pretty sure it's only the access owner, or at minimum admins, but I'm pretty sure it's only the access owner that can create the service account keys, because that's full access. Every API call that can be made, you have access to make. It works the same way. So again, all right, and it's going to do exactly the same thing. And there you go, you have it again. You can copy it, put it someplace safe. But once you have it and you close this, you're not going to see anything more than the last few digits. Okay? So I'll get rid of these just so that nobody's doubting this. And I mean, it's still only a sandbox app, but still good practices, right? Now, third-party authorizations. This is anybody with a front-facing app will want to use OAuth. This is the OAuth setup. Okay, and there's a couple things you have to do for OAuth setup. One, you have to go establish a developer account, and then create an app, what they call an app, within your developer account that is specific for whatever you're working on. So say that I've got my lead tracking project. Okay, so when I want to do that, I go to keys.developer.keep.com, and I create an account. Obviously, I already have an account, but create an account, and once you do, you'll be able to be logged in here. You won't already have these made. These are just things that I have already created, but you'll create a new app, and you're going to say, let's say, okay, and once I do that, I can save it. At least one API key must be selected. Oh, wait, what are you saying? At least one API must be selected for this app. What do you mean? Oh, okay, enable it first, sorry. Haven't done it in a while, so now I have that. Now I can copy, and here's the thing, it's going to be worded differently. So when I go here and I want to add something, well, you don't add it in here, but you'd see it in here. But when I go to set up a connection with OAuth, they usually call this public key sometimes. Sometimes it's client ID, and sometimes this will be private key, or it'll be secret key. Don't let that throw you. The way that you tell the difference is secret's pretty much always used in the one that is the secret one, whereas public key is always made available more publicly than this is. Obviously, I would have to click here, but it would say it would be the application ID or the public key or just API key. Application key is often used. So in this case, under this project, I could add more keys and have separate connections to divide them up. But the point is that this is how you start out with the OAuth process. Then when a developer, then you pass both these pieces of information onto your developer. This is the public key or application key and the secret key or secret ID. You pass them on to your developer, and then there is a back-end API level, code level process to create the connection. So OAuth is much like if you go to sign into a product or service and you see sign in with Google, or you see sign in with Facebook, even though you're not signing in to Facebook, the product that you're trying to sign into, you're not signing into Facebook, you're using the Facebook sign in to validate you as a valid user. Same thing with Google if you pick Google. And when you have to sign in here with any API projects, any OAuth projects, you have to sign in to Keep. Then I'll sign out here. This is the same thing. So when I go back to login, when I have to log in, I could log in with Google and it would accept my Google credentials. But I log in because I'm logging in as a user, one of many users on a single application account. And that's what OAuth is meant for. It's meant for the front-facing public where you have multiple users potentially for any given account, product, or service. And by doing that, you can structure and limit people's access to your application based on their login and whatever permissions you give them. And so for that reason, OAuth was designed and developed, and that's what all this is about. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this because that was just a test. All right. So that's the differences between these. Third-party authorizations are OAuth because they're front-facing, they're products that the public uses. You generally don't need to use, and most people would not care to use OAuth because it's much more involved in developing for it. If it's just an internal service that you're using for your process, that it's not your customers and your clients, they don't have to log into something to sign into your product or service. It's something that you use to track your data or make automations happen within your company or within the process in which your company functions. So personal access tokens and service account keys, again, personal means that it's based on the permissions of the user that is logged in. Service account keys means similar to the legacy key, it has full access, but it's a more secure method. Legacy API key is going to be deprecated, and this is why we're here talking about this. So now having a little bit of an understanding of the differences between these, let me explain why this is probably confusing most people, because most people aren't developers, and it's understood. And Keep knew that that was going to be the case. That's why they contacted some of us developers to try and help to smooth this over a bit. Now that said, the most current SDK you can find on GitHub. Okay, so if you go to github.com/infusionsoft/infusionsoft-php, you will get the most recent SDK. Now there are separation between SDKs. This SDK is what's called object-oriented. It's not really important to understand what object-oriented means. I'm just making the case that this is structured differently than the previous SDKs because the previous SDKs used a different approach to communicating with the API, the XML RPC. This is using REST, which is a different type of API, and if you go to Keep's documentation, you can see that you've got XML RPC, and in fact, I can go there now because I've already resources. Right here. Okay, so I can go to the. I hate how that happens. Sometimes these do not open up, so let me try and get to the REST first and see if that doesn't make a difference. REST docs. I do not know why these are having trouble. They shouldn't be. Let's see, maybe the table schema will, no, it's just all being, okay, there we go, at least one of them worked. Some of these links, for some reason, they do not open. I don't need that open. Do not open the way that they should. Let me drag this out of the way if I can. Okay. Okay, so the difference between them, I'll go to the XML. Okay. Difference between them is, and it really doesn't matter what we do, they have these functions that are available. And you can't, this really doesn't matter to a non-programmer, but they have functions that are available, whereas with the REST implementation, they have more of an organization that's hierarchical. So the fact that that's the case, the reason why I'm explaining that is because if you have an integration that's using the older SDK, any of the older SDKs, the structure for that SDK is far different than the one that supports the REST API. And that is a problem for you because in order to get rid of your API key method and use one of the newer methods, you need the newer SDK, which supports the REST implementation, but the code that's been written for you is significantly different. So if you're more than, let's see, 2015 was when this was last updated. So if your code was written before 2001, 14, 2015, so January 14th, 2015, if your code was written before that point, then you definitely have to have code rewritten or try to find a way to replace your integration with um, something like Zapier, Pabbly, or Make. Um, and this is really what I'm trying to help people understand the differences between. Now, if it's later than that, you may have had your integration designed with the older SDK, but there's a chance that you have the newer SDK, which already supports this. Even if you're using the API key, it supports the newer authentication methods. In that case, you're only going to need to change what key is being used. So instead of using the legacy key, you could use either the personal access token or the service account key. Now you may still need a developer to come in and do that because they've got to find in code where it is and make sure that, and of course they're going to run through some tests to make sure everything's working the way it's supposed to. But the point is that that's going to be a very short, simple, straightforward solution for you. Whereas if it has to be rewritten, the commands, let's say the text that represents the commands for the API, are completely named differently. They're completely organized differently. And so the code that's written for you, if it's older code with an older SDK, it only knows how to use the API key. It does not have any idea how to use OAuth, personal access tokens, or service account keys. And that's the problem that some people are going to come across. We hope not too many people have this problem. We're hoping that most people, at least when their integrations were developed for them, that they were used for, they used the newest SDK, or they used REST, which you can write custom code that doesn't use the SDK at all. In that case, also very easy to fix that. But if it uses the older SDK, these are the people who's going to be hit the most significantly. Fortunately, they are going to be integrations that are much older, and your internal process may not even be using it anymore. You may have moved on and reorganized, your inner workings, and that's good news. But if it's anything that's older than 2015 that it was created, a custom integration was created, then hey, there's no chance that you're not using that you're using anything that doesn't have to be rewritten. It's going to have to be rewritten, or we find a different or even better way to accomplish the same goal. If it's after 2015, then there is a chance that you're using a version that can be very easily converted or changed over, and it does not a guarantee that it is, because developer could have chosen to use the older SDK because they didn't feel the new SDK was really proven yet, or any number of reasons. But you need a developer to come in and verify that for you. If you are using the more current SDK, then you're in luck. You're already using the object-oriented version. It's able to use the REST implementation. It's able to use OAuth very easily. If you prefer to create a product that is front-facing for your customers to use, or if it's a backend that is just for your internal services, for your internal company workings, your processes, your workflow, then all of those should be easy transitions to make. They should not be that intensive. So, take a developer 1, maybe 2 hours counting, testing and verifying everything's good and all that. But if it's a rewrite, depending on how large of an integration it is, then that's another story, and you just have to talk to a developer, let them assess the situation, and advise you on what the next possible steps, what your options are, and what might be available in terms of easier solutions versus quicker solutions, or whether it means a complete rewrite of your integration. Hopefully I didn't over-explain. I was trying not to. I probably did, but it's a tendency of developers to try and want to fill in too many of the blanks. But my biggest hope here was to explain the differences between the authentications and the differences between the actual SDKs, and how to at least have some idea as to whether or not you are vastly affected, significantly affected by this upcoming change in October, or if it's something that's probably more simpler for you and may not be as big of a deal as it sounds like it will be, because I know sometimes you hear this and you think, oh no, everything's going to just stop working and it's going to take us forever. Well, it depends. That's the answer. It depends on some of the things that I went over. So I really do hope that this helped answer some questions. If not, feel free to ask. I'm always in the Keep, available through the Keep forums. I'm always or through the Keep support page. I'm available through the Facebook pages. I'm in MonkeyPod Marketing, and I am happy to answer questions that if something's not understood or I failed to explain this very well, by all means ask me, and I will be happy to answer in between meetings. I may not be able to answer that second, but I guarantee you, I promise you, I will respond with an answer.